Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. Rodney Dangerfield was a stand-up comedian and actor known for his "I don't get no respect" routine. He starred in the hit movie comedies Caddyshack and Back to School during the 1980s. Why Rodney Dangerfield always felt unloved and unwanted. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. In the annals of stand-up comedy history, there are many comedians with a unique style that helped them stand out and become comedy legends. Richard Pryor, George Carlin, and Robin Williams had something special to their comedy. Rodney Dangerfield deserves mention amongst the comedy greats. His unique style of self-deprecating comedy was hilarious and original. Dangerfield easily made the leap from the stand-up stage to film stardom, finding the right roles to support his one-of-a-kind personality. Though the self-deprecating funny man complained "it's not easy being me" in his act, by the 1980s he'd joined comedy's A-list and become an unlikely movie star in hits like Easy Money. Sadly, humour is only so potent an elixir. Throughout a phenomenal career, Dangerfield has always struggled with depression. He battled depression even when things were going well, Joan, his second wife, told. He wished success in his career and in romance came earlier to him. He wanted to live to 120 to make up for all the years of struggle. Aside from his signature black suit and red tie, Rodney Dangerfield's iconic catchphrase, "I don't get no respect," was the centrepiece of not only his stand-up routines, but also his award-winning career as a whole. In fact, his aptly titled comedy album, No Respect, even won a Grammy Award in 1981. The inspiration for the famous tagline, however, wasn't exactly the laughing matter he turned into decades of keeping audiences in stitches and his unique brand of comedy. The comedian's signature catchphrase was born from a joke about playing hide-and-seek. Dangerfield, or Jacob Cohen, was born on November 22, 1921 in Babylon, New York, the youngest of two children. His father, Phil Roy, was a comic and juggler who toured the vaudeville circuit. Roy abandoned the family shortly after Dangerfield's birth, leaving Dangerfield's mother to raise her children alone. He grew up unloved and unwanted. His childhood was miserable. As a kid, he had no supervision at all. They lived in several New York City neighborhoods before settling in Kew Gardens, Queens. To help support the family, he juggled an array of jobs as a teen, including selling ice cream on the beach, delivering groceries, taking care of a newsstand, working at a soda fountain, barking for the theatre, and driving a fish truck. His mother convinced him to open a savings account one summer so he could save up for a football uniform. She also noted that the family matriarch also often withheld affection and kindness. Then she stole his money. In 2004, Dangerfield confessed that if he could change anything about his life, he'd choose a different mother, different father, different sister, different everything, but I'll stay the same. Making people laugh became a lifeline for the youngster. As a coping mechanism, Dangerfield threw himself into comedy, and when he turned 17, he started trying out his act at local clubs' amateur nights. He began performing in his late teens and early 20s under his legal name, Jack Roy, but found little success and spent nearly a decade installing aluminium siding in New Jersey. Later making the new moniker legal and began performing stand-up full-time, Rodney Dangerfield turned to humour and got people to laugh with him, not at him. He landed his first big gig telling jokes at a resort in upstate New York, where he performed for 10 weeks. He earned $12 a week, plus room and board. With a career as a comedian beginning to ramp up, he began to test out new material with audiences, and eventually the "no respect" catchphrase was officially born. As Dangerfield explained in a 1986 interview, "I had this joke. I played hide-and-seek. They wouldn't even look for me. To make it work better, you look for something to put in front of it. I was so poor, I was so dumb, so this, so that. I thought, now what fits that joke? Well, no one liked me was all right, but then I thought a more profound thing would be, I get no respect." Though he continued to land jobs at various comedy clubs, Dangerfield began driving delivery trucks and worked as a singing waiter to make extra money. Despite bringing in as much as $300 a week, comedy didn't pay well enough, and he struggled financially. Dangerfield, who had overheard mobsters using the phrase during one of his shows, later got encouragement from fellow comedian Jack Benny. He was an ace, he was a doll. Dangerfield reflected during a 1979 interview, and he says to me, "Rodney, I'm cheap and I'm 39, that's my image, but your no respect thing, that's into the soul of everybody. Everybody can identify with that. Everyone gets cut off in traffic, everyone gets stood up by a girl, kids are rude to them, whatever," he says to me. "Every day something happens where people feel they didn't get respect." In 1951, after meeting singer Joyce Indig, he decided to give up show business. He and Indig married, moved to New Jersey and had 2 children. To provide for his new family, Dangerfield became a salesman. He continued to write jokes for the next decade. However, even as he was gripped by clinical depression, his marriage also deteriorated, and by 1962 the couple finally divorced. They remarried again in 1963, but after years of struggle the relationship dissolved permanently in 1970. After taking a 15-year hiatus from comedy, during which he worked selling paint and siding and began to raise a family in Englewood, New Jersey, Dangerfield returned to his roots at age 42. After found himself in $20,000 in debt to a loan shark, he returned to comedy at his lowest point, and it changed his life. In light of his troubled personal life, Dangerfield continued to feel drawn to comedy. In the early 1960s he started working toward rehabilitating his career, still working as a salesman by day, but doing stand-up at night. Afraid of more rejection, he began performing under the pseudonym Rodney Dangerfield, a reference to a joke by early comedian Jack Benny. Reborn under his new stage name, Rodney got his second start. He got his first big break performing on The Ed Sullivan Show in the 1970s, followed shortly thereafter by regular appearances on The Dean Martin Show and The Tonight Show. His No Respect bit, of course, became the highlight. From there the rest was history, as Dangerfield went on to appear in such films as 1980's Caddyshack, 1983's Easy Money, Back to School in 1986, as well as 1994's Natural Born Killers. The decades passed and he landed more and more roles in feature films and comedy concert specials, but his internal state remained the same. He often stayed in bed under the covers, unable to face the world. One day he was all amped up and full of stories. The next day he couldn't remember anything and didn't make an effort. It is a strange combination, the man who makes millions of people cackle, cowering in misery. But it's logical too. If a really good comedian isn't depressed, something's wrong, said stand-up veteran Bob Saget, who was discovered by Dangerfield at the famed Comedy Store in Hollywood. In his adolescence, Dangerfield also found himself the target of anti-Semitism from teachers and classmates alike. The whole no respect theme came from his environment. The phrase eventually cemented Dangerfield's place in the world of comedy. "I don't get no respect" was Dangerfield's way of saying no one liked me. When you're a comedian, you're looking at the world from the outside in. You're trying to be funny, but at the same time you're really asking, what's it all mean? Rodney has always talked about the heaviness, about how heavy everything is. It's funny when he says it, but the meaning behind it isn't. The weight is on his shoulders, he feels it, and it's torturous. As a result, Dangerfield's life has been an ode to pain alleviation. He first tried marijuana as a 21-year-old in 1942, and has lit up a joint at least once every day for 60 straight years. He even got high in the White House during a visit with Ronald Reagan in 1983. He's used most of the other drugs out there, has slept with his share of prostitutes, and has combined every conceivable genre of fattening food into one big sandwich. He said making audiences laugh was like a fix he needed to survive. He would always try to get booked on his birthday as a little gift to himself. It meant that he was still relevant. After Dangerfield's former wife died in the early 70s, the comedian opened the comedy club, Dangerfield's in Manhattan, to be closer to his children. The club was a success, and Dangerfield was generous about providing a stage for unknown comedians. Jim Carrey, Jerry Seinfeld, Adam Sandler and Roseanne Barr were among the many comics who performed there. Rodney never lost his sense of humour, even as he underwent health issues. Dangerfield, who long suffered from heart problems, underwent a double bypass surgery in 2000. In 2003, he returned to the hospital for arterial brain surgery. The night before his surgery, he was concerned about whether he'd still be able to tell jokes. He said, "Honey, if I can't be in show business, I don't know what I'll do. I'm too jealous to be your pimp." Dangerfield's career continued to rise, and the comedian showed no signs of stopping, but after a heart valve replacement surgery in August of 2004, Dangerfield suffered a small stroke and slipped into a coma. He died from surgical complications on October 5, 2004, in Los Angeles, California, at the age of 82. Despite his difficult childhood, by the time Dangerfield died in October 2004, he had certainly gained the respect he deserved. No matter how Dangerfield complained on stage about how life treated him, the comic never exploited it for pathos or poignancy. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of Rodney Dangerfield? He was one of the best comedians of all time, and his unique style and delivery made him perfect for audiences.